A woman stands alone in a frozen frontier town, facing the most powerful man in Wyoming who wants to destroy her. Behind her, a scarred mountain giant the whole territory fears. In 48 hours, she'll lose everything unless she can expose the truth buried in a corrupt land baron's mansion. This is the story of two people the world threw away, a woman everyone called worthless and a man they called a monster. What happens when the forgotten fight back? Stay until the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The first time Evelyn Mercer understood she had become invisible was on a Tuesday afternoon in March, when Jacob Sterling walked directly into her while carrying a crate of dynamite. He didn't apologize, didn't even look down, just stepped around her like she was a barrel or a hitching post and kept walking toward the assay office across the muddy street. Evelyn stood there in front of her own trading post, snow melting into her boots, watching the back of a man who'd eaten Sunday dinner at her table 3 years running when her father was alive. She was 39 years old, and the world had stopped seeing her. Black Hollow, Wyoming Territory, 1883. Population, 473. Not counting the Chinese workers nobody bothered to count, or the Shoshone who passed through in summer, or the women who worked above the Silver Dollar Saloon. A mining town hammered into the side of the Medicine Bow Mountains like a railroad spike, ugly, necessary, and brutal. The town had 2 churches, 5 saloons, 1 doctor who drank more than his patients, and Evelyn's trading post, Mercer and Daughter General Merchandise, though there hadn't been a Mercer except her for 6 years now. Her father, Thomas Mercer, had built the business from nothing after the war. Started with a tent and $300 in seed money, ended with the largest commercial building between Laramie and South Pass City. 2 stories of rough-cut timber with glass windows imported from Chicago. Shelves stocked with everything a mining camp needed, pickaxes and bacon, laudanum and lamp oil, tobacco and treated canvas. Thomas Mercer had been somebody. Men respected him, listened when he spoke at town meetings, invited him to play cards with the mine superintendents and cattle buyers. His daughter inherited the building and the inventory. She did not inherit the respect. Evelyn locked the trading post door at 6 o'clock, same as always. Counted the cash box, $14.30, which was decent for a Tuesday in mud season when half the mining claims were flooded. Put the money in the safe her father had bolted to the floor of the back office. Checked the stove, trimmed the lamps, pulled her wool coat tight against the wind that came screaming down from the high peaks. The walk to her house took 4 minutes. A narrow 2-room cabin wedged between the assay office and a boarding house that smelled like boiled cabbage and unwashed men. She'd grown up in that cabin, nursed her father through his final illness in the iron bed that still dominated the main room. Sometimes she could still hear his labored breathing at night, still smell the carbolic soap she'd used to wash his sheets. Inside, she lit the stove and put coffee on to boil, hung her coat on the peg by the door, sat at the scarred kitchen table and ate cold cornbread left over from breakfast, because cooking for one person seemed like admitting something she wasn't ready to admit. Through the thin walls, she could hear the Bradley family next door. Sam Bradley shouting at his wife about burned potatoes, their 3 kids thundering across the floor like a herd of panicked elk, a baby crying, life, noise, the sound of people who belonged to each other. Evelyn ate her cornbread in silence. She'd spent her 20s caring for her father after his lungs started failing. Black lung, the doctor said. Too many years breathing rock dust in the deep shafts before he'd saved enough to open the store. For 8 years, she'd watched Thomas Mercer fade like a photograph left in sunlight, coughing, weakening, shrinking into something barely recognizable as the strong man who'd raised her alone after her mother died in childbirth. Men had courted her back then. A few. Miners mostly, rough but decent, looking for a woman who could read and keep accounts. But Thomas needed her, couldn't manage the stairs, couldn't work the counter when the coughing fits came, couldn't be left alone overnight. So Evelyn said no. Said maybe later, said let me think about it. She said no until the men stopped asking. Thomas died on a Sunday morning in November, and Evelyn buried him next to her mother in the cemetery on the hill where the wind never stopped blowing. She was 33 years old. Still young enough, she'd thought, still time. That was 6 years ago. Now the men who came into her trading post looked through her like she was made of glass. They wanted their supplies weighed and wrapped, their accounts settled, Their special orders placed. They didn't want Evelyn. The young miners courted the fresh girls who came west looking for husbands. 18, 20 years old, skin unlined, hopes still intact. The established men, the mine supervisors and business owners, they wanted decorative wives who'd look good at territorial social functions. Young enough to give them children, pretty enough to show off. Evelyn was neither young nor decorative. She was capable, organized, good with numbers. Built like her father, tall, broad-shouldered, strong enough to lift a 50-pound flour sack without help. Her face was weathered from Wyoming wind. Her hands were scarred from warehouse work. Her dark hair had started showing silver. The word the town used, when they bothered to discuss her at all, was spinster. She'd heard it last week at the post office. 2 women from the Methodist church, talking just loud enough to make sure she'd hear. Poor Evelyn Mercer. Spent her best years playing nursemaid, and now look at her. Alone in that drafty little cabin, no prospects, running that store like a man. It's unnatural. My herald says she's too particular, thinks she's better than the men who'd have her. Well, she's not getting any younger. Another few years and she'll be completely unmarriageable. Mark my words. Evelyn had collected her mail and walked out without acknowledging them. But their words had followed her home like stray dogs. Unmarriageable. Too particular. Unnatural. As if wanting more than a marriage of convenience made her defective. As if she was supposed to be grateful that any man would consider taking on a tall, aging shopkeeper with calloused hands and opinions about inventory management. She finished her cornbread and stood to wash the plate. Outside, the wind rattled the shutters. Spring in the high country meant temperatures that swung 40 degrees between noon and midnight, mud that sucked at your boots, snow that fell without warning and melted by afternoon. Evelyn had lived through 39 Wyoming springs. She knew better than to trust the weather, or much of anything else. The next morning started the same way every morning started. Up before dawn, coffee and oatmeal. Walk to the trading post while the sky turned from black to gray. Unlock the door. Light the stoves, one in the main retail area, one in the back warehouse. Start the coffee pot for customers who'd stop by before heading to the mines. By 7 o'clock, the first miners were already lined up at the counter. Evelyn filled their orders without conversation. Tobacco, rolling papers, matches, pickaxe handles, rope. The transactions were mechanical, money exchanged for goods. No pleasantries, no eye contact. She'd become what her father's store needed, a functional piece of equipment, like the cash register or the scales. Around 9, a freight wagon pulled up outside. Evelyn stepped into the street to supervise the unloading. 100-pound bags of flour, crates of canned tomatoes, barrels of salt pork. The freighter's assistant was new, a kid, maybe 16, all elbows and bad skin. "Where you want these, sir?" he asked, looking right past Evelyn to the empty space behind her. "I'm the owner," Evelyn said. "Stack the flour against the north wall, canned goods in the warehouse." The kid blinked. "Oh, sorry, ma'am. Thought you was just, You thought I was just standing here for decoration?" "No, ma'am. I'll get right on it." She watched him wrestle the flour bags inside, his face red with embarrassment or exertion or both. The freighter himself, a grizzled man named Cartwright, who'd been running supplies to Black Hollow for 20 years, tipped his hat. "Miss Mercer, your father would be proud. Way you've kept this place running." It was meant as a compliment. Evelyn knew that, but somehow it landed like an insult anyway. Your father would be proud. As if her only value was in maintaining what a man had built. As if she hadn't kept the store profitable through 2 brutal winters and a silver price crash that had bankrupted half the businesses in town. "Thank you, Mr. Cartwright," she said, because what else could she say? By noon, the trading post was busy. Miners coming off night shift, housewives buying flour and sugar. A prospector trying to sell her a claim map that was probably worthless. Evelyn moved through the chaos like water around stones, efficient, unremarkable, necessary, but unnoticed. Then Silas Crow walked in. The store didn't go quiet exactly. People kept browsing, kept talking, but the quality of the noise changed, got tighter, more careful, like everyone had just spotted a rattlesnake coiled in the corner. Silas Crow owned half the county, literally. 40,000 acres of ranch land, timber rights, water rights, mineral claims. He'd come to Wyoming Territory 15 years ago with railroad money and Eastern connections, and he'd built an empire by being smarter and meaner than everyone else. He was 53 years old, handsome in a cold way, silver hair, sharp features, expensive suits imported from San Francisco. Never married. Didn't need to be. He had a house in Cheyenne, an apartment in Denver, and a rotating selection of young women who were paid well for their discretion. What Silas Crow wanted, Silas Crow got. And for the past 6 months, what he wanted was Evelyn's trading post. Miss Mercer. He removed his hat with exaggerated courtesy. Busy day. Mr. Crow. Evelyn kept her voice neutral. What can I do for you? Actually, I was hoping we could speak privately about that business proposition I mentioned. The business proposition. He'd made his first offer in October, $12,000 for the building and inventory, a fair price, maybe even generous. Except Evelyn didn't want to sell. The trading post was all she had. Her father's legacy, her livelihood, her purpose. She'd said no. He'd come back in December with $15,000. No. February, $18,000. No. Now here he was again, and Evelyn was tired of saying no. I appreciate your interest, Mr. Crow, but my position hasn't changed. The store isn't for sale. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Perhaps we could discuss terms that might change your mind, over dinner, say, Saturday evening. And there it was. The thing that had been lurking under every offer, every polite visit, every exaggerated courtesy. Silas Crow didn't just want the store. He wanted Evelyn to come with it. Not because he loved her. Not because he valued her company. Because marriage was simpler than negotiation. A wife's property became her husband's property. No lawyers, no contested sales, just a simple legal transfer disguised as romance. Evelyn felt something cold and hard settle in her chest. I'm not interested in dinner, Mr. Crow, or in selling my property. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have customers waiting. She turned away, dismissing him, treating him like he was ordinary instead of powerful. It was a small act of defiance, but in Black Hollow, where Silas Crow's word could shut down a mine or foreclose a mortgage, it was practically revolutionary. His hand shot out and grabbed her wrist, not hard enough to hurt, just hard enough to stop her, to make a point. You're being foolish, Evelyn. His voice dropped low, intimate in a way that made her skin crawl. A woman alone running a business in a town like this, it's not sustainable. You need protection, guidance, a man's name and resources. I need you to let go of my wrist. I'm trying to help you. This store, this building, it's too much for you to manage. Everyone can see that you're struggling. I'm not struggling. You're lonely. He said it like a diagnosis, like something broken that needed fixing. Living in that sad little cabin, working yourself to exhaustion, aging without companionship or purpose beyond weighing flour and counting pennies. Is this really the life you imagined for yourself? Evelyn jerked her wrist free. Around them, the other customers had stopped pretending not to listen. The whole store was watching now, waiting to see what the unmarriageable spinster would do when one of the most powerful men in Wyoming told her she was wasting her life. Mr. Crow, Evelyn said loud enough for everyone to hear, my life is none of your concern. My business is not for sale. I'm not interested in your dinner invitations or your protection or your guidance. If you need supplies, I'm happy to serve you as a customer. Otherwise, I'll ask you to leave. For 3 seconds, maybe 4, Silas Crow just stared at her. His face didn't change expression, but something shifted behind his eyes. Something that recognized he'd been refused in public, in front of witnesses, by a woman who was supposed to be desperate for exactly what he was offering. He put his hat back on, adjusted it carefully. You'll regret this, he said quietly. Sooner than you think. Then he walked out, boot heels clicking on the wooden floor, leaving behind a silence so complete Evelyn could hear the stove ticking. Someone coughed. A woman picked up a spool of thread she'd been examining. The normal sounds of commerce slowly resumed, but Evelyn's hands were shaking. She'd made an enemy, a powerful, vindictive enemy who didn't forgive humiliation and who had the resources to make her life very difficult. She finished out the day on autopilot, sold nails and coffee and lamp wicks, smiled when appropriate, made change, answered questions about back-ordered merchandise. At 6 o'clock, she locked the door and counted the cash box. $22.60. A good day. It didn't feel like a good day. Evelyn was halfway through closing procedures when she heard the back door of the warehouse open. She froze. The warehouse was locked. She'd checked it herself an hour ago. She grabbed the pistol her father had kept under the counter, a Colt .45 she'd learned to shoot when she was 14, moved quietly toward the warehouse, her heart hammering against her ribs. The warehouse was dim, lit only by the last gray daylight filtering through the high windows. Shadows pooled between crates and barrels. And standing in the middle of the floor, surrounded by 50-pound flour sacks like they weighed nothing, was the largest man Evelyn had ever seen. 6.5 feet tall, maybe more. Shoulders like a barn door. Wearing buckskin and fur, covered in trail dust, with a rifle slung across his back and a knife the size of a small sword on his belt. His face was hard to read in the shadows. Scarred, she thought, bearded. Eyes that caught the light like an animal's. He turned toward her slowly, no sudden movements, and Evelyn raised the pistol. "The store is closed," she said. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "You're trespassing." Door was unlocked. His voice was rough, like he didn't use it often. "Came for supplies." "The front door was locked. How did you—" "Back door." He gestured toward the warehouse entrance that opened onto the alley. "Latch is broken. Been broken for weeks." He was right. She'd been meaning to fix it, kept forgetting. And now she was locked in her own warehouse with a man who looked like he could snap her in half without breathing hard. "I don't know you," Evelyn said. "And I don't do business after hours. Come back tomorrow." Leaving at first light. Heading back up to the high country. Need coffee, salt, ammunition, can pay. He reached for his pocket and Evelyn's finger tightened on the trigger. "Don't." He stopped, raised both hands slowly, palms out. "Easy, just showing coin. Not here to cause trouble." They stood there in the gathering dark, neither moving. Evelyn tried to remember what her father had taught her about dangerous men. Most of them talked big, postured, made threats. The truly dangerous ones stayed quiet, watched, waited. This man was quiet. "What's your name?" she asked. "Caleb Rourke." The name hit her like cold water. She'd heard it before. Everyone in the territory had heard it. Caleb Rourke, the mountain man who lived somewhere up past the timberline where normal people didn't go. The trapper who brought in pelts so perfect the furriers in Cheyenne fought over them. The hunter who'd supposedly killed a grizzly with a knife after his rifle misfired. The man who'd walked into a Shoshone camp alone and walked out 3 days later with a peace agreement nobody thought possible. Stories about Caleb Rourke tended toward the mythological. Some said he'd been a soldier who'd done terrible things in the war and couldn't live among people anymore. Some said he was part Indian, part white, raised by neither. Some said he'd killed a man in a duel back east and fled to the mountains to escape prosecution. The Methodist women said he was a heathen who lived like an animal and probably ate raw meat. Evelyn had always assumed most of it was exaggeration. Mountain men were supposed to be wild and dangerous. It sold dime novels and gave miners something to talk about around campfires. But looking at Caleb Rourke now, standing perfectly still in her warehouse, with his hands raised and his eyes reflecting lamplight like a wolf's, Evelyn thought maybe the stories hadn't exaggerated enough. "I've heard of you," she said. "I imagine. People say you're dangerous. People say a lot of things." "Are you dangerous, Mr. Rourke?" He considered the question. "Depends on the situation." "And this situation?" "I need coffee and salt." "You sell coffee and salt," seemed straightforward. Despite everything, the gun in her hand, the fear hammering in her chest, the absolute insanity of conducting business with a legendary mountain man in her warehouse after closing, Evelyn almost smiled. "How much coffee?" 20 pounds, 10 of salt. 2 boxes of .45-70 cartridges if you have them. She did have them. The ammunition was expensive, mostly used by buffalo hunters and the occasional wealthy sportsman. "That's a lot of coffee. Long winter." "You live up past Desolation Peak?" "Further." "That's impossible. There's nothing past Desolation Peak except cliffs and snowfields." "There's my cabin." Evelyn lowered the pistol slightly. Not all the way. Just enough to suggest she wasn't planning to shoot him in the next 30 seconds. "I'll get your supplies. But you pay before you leave, and you fix that door latch before you go." Something might have been amusement flickered across his scarred face. "Fair enough." She lit 2 more lamps and gathered his order while he waited, motionless as a carved statue, in the center of the warehouse. 20 pounds of coffee beans, 10 pounds of salt, 2 boxes of ammunition, $40 worth right there. When she brought the supplies to the makeshift counter she used for warehouse inventory, he counted out gold coins, real gold, not paper money or banknotes. Each coin was heavy and old, worn smooth at the edges. "Where did you get these?" Evelyn asked before she could stop herself. "Trapped beaver 15 years ago when they were worth something. Been saving." "These are worth more than I know what they're worth." He met her eyes for the first time fully, and Evelyn saw they were pale gray, the color of winter sky. "Consider the extra payment for after-hours service and scaring you. You didn't scare me. You're still holding the pistol." She looked down. He was right. Her finger was still on the trigger, the barrel pointed somewhere near his chest. Evelyn set the gun on the counter carefully. "The latch?" He nodded and walked to the back door. In the lamplight, she could see him clearly now, the scars that marked his face and hands, the gray threading through his dark beard, the way he moved with absolute economy. No wasted motion, no uncertainty. He examined the broken latch, pulled a small toolkit from his belt, and had it repaired in less than 3 minutes. "There. Won't bother you again." "Thank you." He gathered his supplies, distributing the weight between a pack on his back and a canvas bag he carried in one hand. Easily 70 pounds of goods, and he lifted it like it was nothing. At the door, he paused. "The man who was in your store earlier, Crow." Evelyn went very still. "What about him?" "He's angry. Men like that don't forget being refused." "I can handle Silas Crow." "I'm sure you can." Caleb adjusted the pack on his shoulders. "But if you can't, I'm usually at Fort Bridger in late June for the rendezvous. Send word if you need it." Then he was gone, disappearing into the alley like smoke, leaving Evelyn standing alone in the warehouse with a repaired door latch and more questions than answers. Why had Caleb Rourke offered help to a woman he'd never met? How had he known about her confrontation with Silas? And why did the thought of this scarred, silent mountain man watching over her from somewhere in the high peaks make her feel safer than she'd felt in years? She locked the warehouse, finished closing the store, and walked home through streets that suddenly felt less empty. That night, for the first time in longer than she could remember, Evelyn Mercer slept soundly. She didn't know that 3 days later, the worst blizzard in 20 years would tear through Black Hollow. She didn't know that Caleb Rourke would nearly die trying to reach his cabin. She didn't know that she would drag his frozen body through her door in the middle of the night and fight for hours to save his life. She didn't know that everything was about to change. But somewhere high in the mountains, where the wind screamed through ice-sheathed pines and snow fell like judgment, fate was already moving, and neither Evelyn Mercer nor Caleb Rourke would ever be invisible again. The sky turned the wrong color on Friday afternoon. Evelyn noticed it while restocking the shelves near the front window. A peculiar yellow-gray that made the mountains look flat and lifeless, like a painting someone had left out in the rain. The air pressure had dropped too. She could feel it in her joints, the way her father had always complained about before storms. Old Pete Hutchins came in around 3 for his weekly tobacco, took one look at the sky, and swore. "That's a killer coming," he said, his arthritic fingers fumbling with his coin purse. "Seen that color twice before. Once in 67, once in 74. Both times we lost people." "How long do we have?" Evelyn asked. "Nightfall, maybe sooner. You got firewood stocked?" "Enough for a week." "Better make it 2 weeks. This one's going to sit on us like a gravestone." He wasn't wrong. By 4 o'clock, the first snow started falling. Not the lazy, pretty flakes that drifted down on normal winter days, but hard pellets of ice that rattled against the windows like thrown gravel. The wind picked up. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in an hour. Evelyn sent her last customers home and started closing early. She was hauling the sidewalk merchandise display inside when she saw the riders coming down Main Street. 3 men on horseback, pushing hard against the wind. The lead rider was Silas Crow, his expensive coat already white with snow. Behind him rode 2 of his ranch hands, the Garrett brothers, mean as snakes and twice as quick. They pulled up in front of the trading post. Silas dismounted like he owned the hitching rail. "Miss Mercer, still open?" "I was about to close, storm coming, so I noticed. I need provisions. My men and I are riding to the Sweetwater station, taking inventory of my property before the roads become impassable." It was a lie. Evelyn could see it in the tension around his eyes, the way the Garrett brothers kept glancing at each other. Nobody rode to Sweetwater Station in weather like this unless they were running from something or chasing it. But it wasn't her business to question customers, even ones she didn't trust. "Come in, I'll make it quick." They tracked snow and mud across her clean floor. Silas wandered the aisles like he was browsing, picking up items and putting them down, while his men loaded a pack saddle with supplies: hardtack, coffee, jerky, ammunition. Too much ammunition. "Planning to start a war, Mr. Crow?" He smiled without warmth. "Wolves have been troubling my livestock. Sometimes you need to make a point." The Garrett brothers snickered. Evelyn kept her face blank and tallied their purchases. $43. Silas paid in banknotes, counted out slowly, making sure she saw the thick roll of money in his pocket. "Must be lonely," he said, "running this place all by yourself. Especially with weather like this coming. Dangerous even. A woman alone, no one to check on her, make sure she's safe and warm." "I manage fine. Do you?" He leaned against the counter, too close. "Because I've been thinking about our last conversation, about your situation, and I realize I may have approached it incorrectly." "There's no correct approach to something I'm not interested in." "Everyone has a price, Evelyn. Everyone. It's just a matter of finding what they value." The way he said her first name made her skin crawl, like he owned it already. "My price is the store staying mine. Now, if you're finished..." "We're not." He straightened, and something shifted in his expression, something that had been hiding under the polite veneer. "I gave you opportunities. Multiple chances to do this the easy way. You refused, so now we're going to do it differently." Evelyn's hand moved toward the pistol under the counter. "I wouldn't," Silas said quietly. The Garrett brothers had moved to flank her, blocking the path to the door. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to reconsider my offer. You're going to think very carefully about how vulnerable you are, how quickly things can go wrong for a woman with no protection, no family, no allies. Get out. Accidents happen, Evelyn. Fires start. Shipments go missing. Customers stop coming because they've heard rumors about quality, about dishonest scales, about merchandise that's not quite what it seems. Bank loans get called in early. Property taxes get reassessed. The territorial government starts asking questions about licensing and permits." He was standing so close now she could smell the pomade in his hair. "Or," he continued, "you accept my very generous offer. $20,000 for the building and inventory. We announce an engagement. 6 months from now, we have a quiet wedding. You keep running the store if you want. I don't care. You get financial security. I get what I want. Everyone wins. Except I don't want to marry you." "Want?" He laughed. "This isn't about want. This is about reality. You're a 39-year-old woman with no prospects, no future, and no options. I'm offering you a life. Most men wouldn't bother." Evelyn pulled the pistol and aimed it at his chest. The store went silent except for the wind howling outside. "Get out of my store," she said. "Now." Silas looked at the gun, then at her face, then smiled. "You won't shoot me. You're not stupid enough to murder the wealthiest man in the county in front of witnesses. That's a hanging offense, Evelyn. And unlike you, I have friends who'd make sure justice was served. Maybe I won't kill you. Maybe I'll just shoot you somewhere painful and claim self-defense. You did threaten me. In front of witnesses." For the first time, uncertainty flickered across his face. "We're leaving," he said. "But this conversation isn't over. You have until Monday to reconsider. After that, things get difficult." They walked out into the blizzard, and Evelyn stood there shaking, the pistol still raised, until she heard their horses disappear into the storm. Then she locked the door, checked every window, and sat down hard on the floor behind the counter. Her father had taught her to shoot, had taught her to run the business, manage inventory, negotiate with suppliers, had taught her to be strong and independent and never rely on any man for anything she could do herself. But Thomas Mercer had never taught her what to do when being strong and independent made you a target. The storm hit full force around sunset. Evelyn made it home before the worst of it, fighting wind that tried to rip her coat off, snow that stung her face like needles. Inside the cabin, she fed the stove until it roared, lit every lamp she owned, and tried not to think about Silas Crow's threats. She made coffee, burned it, made more, sat at the kitchen table and listened to the wind scream. Sometime around midnight, she heard something over the storm. A sound that didn't belong. A heavy thud against her door like someone had fallen against it. Evelyn grabbed the pistol and approached slowly. "Who's there?" No answer. Just another thud, weaker this time. She cracked the door open and the wind nearly tore it off its hinges. Snow blasted into the cabin, and there, collapsed on her doorstep, was Caleb Rourke. He was barely conscious, covered in ice. His lips were blue. His eyes weren't focusing right. "Jesus Christ," Evelyn breathed and hauled him inside. He was too heavy, too big. She got him halfway through the door and had to stop, gasping, her muscles screaming. The wind kept pushing, trying to force the door closed with him still half outside. "Caleb, Caleb, you have to help me. I can't." He moved. Barely. Just enough to get his legs under him, to crawl the last few feet while she pulled. They got the door closed together and collapsed on the floor, both breathing hard. His clothes were frozen solid. Ice had formed in his beard. When she touched his hand, it was like touching stone. Evelyn had seen frostbite before, had seen what happened to men who stayed out in weather like this. She'd seen old Tom Wilson lose 3 fingers and both feet after falling through ice on Black Hollow Creek. Seen Danny Rourke, no relation to Caleb, buried after he froze to death 20 feet from his own cabin door. She knew what she was looking at. "Can you talk?" she asked. "Caleb, can you hear me?" His eyes found hers, pale gray, struggling to focus. Tried to reach the cabin. Avalanche blocked the pass. "How long were you out there?" "Since... don't know. Lost track." "Hours then. Maybe half a day. Long enough that he should be dead." Evelyn made a decision. She stripped him. Had to cut the clothes off in places where the ice had fused them to his skin. His coat, his shirt, his boots. She had to break the ice before she could unlace them. His pants. Everything. She'd never seen a naked man before. Her father's body when she'd washed him during his illness. But that had been different. This was different. Caleb Rourke's body was a map of violence. Scars everywhere. Long ones, short ones, puckered circles that looked like bullet wounds. Claw marks across his ribs that must have been from the grizzly the stories talked about. His hands were scarred. His arms. His chest. But right now, all that mattered was getting him warm. She dragged him close to the stove. Not too close, she remembered that much from her father's lectures about frostbite, and piled every blanket she owned on top of him. Heated water on the stove and made him drink. Hot coffee. Weak tea. Soup she'd made 2 days ago. He kept trying to refuse. "Don't need charity. Shut up and drink." Should go, "Can't compromise you. You're half frozen and delirious. Drink the damn soup." He drank. For hours she worked. Changed the blankets when they got damp from melting ice. Made more hot drinks. Watched his color slowly return from blue-white to something closer to human. His fingers and toes were the worst. She massaged them gently, trying to restore circulation, terrified she'd see the blackening that meant tissue death. Around 3 in the morning, his shivering finally stopped. "Better?" she asked. He nodded. Still couldn't quite talk right. The cold had gotten into his bones. Evelyn stood and stretched muscles that felt like they'd been beaten with hammers. She was exhausted. Her cabin was a disaster. Wet clothes everywhere, puddles of melted snow, the acrid smell of coffee boiled too long. "You'll stay here until the storm breaks," she said. "I have the bed. You can have the floor by the stove." "Can't." "You can, and you will. I didn't spend all night keeping you alive just so you could stagger out into a blizzard and die anyway. People will talk. People already talk. Let them." He looked at her for a long moment, his gray eyes clearer now, more focused. "Why are you doing this?" Evelyn sat down in the chair across from where he lay bundled in blankets. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, the stove ticked and settled. "Because you fixed my door latch," she said, "and because you offered to help if I needed it, and because I'm tired of being the kind of person who turns away someone who's dying on her doorstep just because it might cause gossip. That's not very practical." "No, it's not. Your father wouldn't have done it. My father died alone and afraid, worrying about what people thought of him right up until his last breath. I don't want to die that way." Caleb was quiet, then, "Fair enough." The storm lasted 3 days. For 3 days, they were trapped together in a space barely big enough for one person, let alone 2. For 3 days, Black Hollow was cut off from the world. No mail, no supplies, no travel. For 3 days, Evelyn learned things about Caleb Rourke that the stories never mentioned. He was quiet, but it wasn't the dangerous quiet of violent men. It was the quiet of someone who'd learned that most words were unnecessary. When he did speak, he chose his language carefully, never wasted syllables. He was clean, obsessively so. The first morning, when he was strong enough to stand, he insisted on washing himself at the basin despite the fact that heating enough water was a major undertaking. He shaved, combed his hair, folded his blankets into precise squares. Mountain habit, he explained when he caught her watching. Living alone, you keep things orderly or everything falls apart. He was useful. Fixed the chair that wobbled, adjusted the stove door that never quite closed right, noticed that her chimney was drawing poorly, and climbed onto the roof in a brief break in the weather to clear the creosote buildup. "You don't have to," Evelyn started. "I know, but I'm here, might as well be helpful." And slowly, carefully, like ice melting in spring, they started to talk. Small things at first, the weather, the quality of the coffee, whether the storm would break by Monday, then bigger things. On the second day, Evelyn told him about Silas Crow's threats, about feeling trapped, about lying awake at night trying to figure out how to protect something she'd already lost the moment someone powerful decided they wanted it. Caleb listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. "Men like Crow," he said finally, "they think the world owes them things. Women, property, respect. They can't conceive of a universe where someone says no and means it. Have you known men like that?" "I've killed men like that." He said it matter-of-factly, the way someone else might say they'd fixed a broken wagon wheel. Evelyn should have been frightened, should have reconsidered letting this scarred mountain man stay in her cabin. Instead, she felt something settle in her chest, something like relief. "In the war?" she asked. "During, after. War makes men like Crow, gives them a taste for power. Some of them learn to control it, some don't." "Which were you?" He looked at her directly. "I was good at killing, too good. It scared me. So I went as far from people as I could get. To the high country. To the high country. And now? Now I trap beaver that aren't worth anything anymore. Hunt elk for camps that pay in promises. Live in a cabin so remote I see another human maybe twice a year." He paused. "It's quiet." "Lonely?" "Sometimes, but I'm not hurting anyone. That counts for something." On the third day, Caleb told her about the scars. They were having coffee. Evelyn had finally figured out how to make it drinkable, when she asked about the marks on his hands, the ones that looked like something had tried to tear his fingers off. "Trap," he said. "Spring trap meant for wolves. I was 16, stupid, wasn't watching where I stepped." "Who got you out?" "No one. Took me 4 hours to work the jaws open with a stick, another 3 to walk back to camp. By then, infection had set in. Man I was working for wanted to cut the fingers off. I convinced him to wait." "How?" "Put my knife to his throat and explained the situation." Despite everything, Evelyn laughed. "Did you keep the fingers?" "Obviously." He flexed his hand. 2 of the fingers were slightly crooked, permanently stiff. "Can't shoot as well as I used to, but well enough." "And the others?" She gestured vaguely at his chest, where the blanket had slipped to reveal the parallel scars. "The grizzly?" "Female. I got between her and cubs, my fault. She was just protecting what was hers." "Did you kill her?" "No, wounded her enough that she backed off. Then I ran like hell." He touched the scars absently. "She earned these. Would have felt wrong to kill her for it." Evelyn found herself wanting to touch the scars, to trace the map of survival written on his skin. She didn't, but the wanting was there. "The stories about you," she said. "Are they true?" "Which stories?" "That you killed a man in a duel back east." "No duel. But yes, I killed a man in Pennsylvania, 1867. "What happened?" Caleb was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "He was beating a woman to death behind a tavern. I stopped him. He came at me with a knife. I took the knife away and used it on him. The law didn't see it as self-defense. The woman was a prostitute. The man was a judge's son. So I left." How old were you? 23. And you've been running ever since. Not running, just not going back. The wind rattled the shutters. The stove crackled. Outside, the world was white and howling. Inside, something was shifting, something Evelyn couldn't quite name. She'd spent 6 years alone, 6 years being invisible, being practical, being the woman who didn't need anyone because needing people meant being disappointed. But sitting across from Caleb Rourke, watching the lamplight catch the gray in his beard, listening to him talk about the kind of loneliness that drove a man to the edge of the world, Evelyn realized she'd been wrong. Needing people wasn't weakness. Being alone wasn't strength. It was just being alone. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Yes." "That day in the trading post, when Silas was there, you offered to help me. Why?" Caleb set down his coffee cup. "Because I've seen that look on too many faces. That look that says the world's closing in and there's no way out. I've worn that look. Know what it costs. And you thought you could help. Thought I could offer. Whether you accept it or not was your choice. I'm accepting now." "I know." "Does that scare you?" He smiled. It was barely there, just a quirk at the corner of his mouth, but it changed his whole face. Made him look younger, less like a legend and more like a man. "Terrifies me," he said. That night, the storm finally started to break. The wind died down. The snow stopped falling. Through the gaps in the shutters, Evelyn could see stars. "I should go," Caleb said. "At first light. Give you back your privacy." "What if I don't want you to go?" The words came out before she could stop them. Honest, raw. The kind of thing a practical woman would never say. Caleb went very still. "Evelyn, I know what it sounds like. I know what people will say. I don't care." She stood, crossed to where he sat by the stove, and knelt so they were eye level. "For 3 days, I've had another person in my house, someone to talk to, someone who doesn't look through me like I'm invisible, and I don't want to go back to being alone. You barely know me. I know you fixed my door latch. I know you offered help when you didn't have to. I know you climbed on my roof in a blizzard to fix my chimney. I know you killed a man to save a woman you didn't know, and you've been paying for it ever since." She took a breath. "I know enough. People will talk. Let them talk. Crow will use it against you. Crow's already using everything against me. At least this way I'm not fighting alone." Caleb reached out slowly and touched her face. His hand was rough, scarred, warm. "I'm not good at this. At being around people. At being what someone needs. I don't need you to be anything. I just need you to stay." For a long moment they stayed like that, kneeling by the stove while the storm died outside and the fire burned low. Then Caleb leaned forward and kissed her. It wasn't practiced, wasn't smooth. He kissed like someone who hadn't kissed anyone in 20 years, uncertain and gentle and desperate all at once. Evelyn kissed him back. She'd been kissed before, a few times by boys who'd courted her before her father got sick. Those kisses had been polite, careful, the kind of kisses that asked permission and waited for approval. This wasn't that. This was two people who'd been alone too long, finding each other in the ruins of a blizzard. When they broke apart, Evelyn was shaking. "Stay," she said again. "I'll stay." "Until the snow melts? Longer than that." "How much longer?" Caleb looked at her with those winter sky eyes. "As long as you'll have me." The storm broke completely by morning. Evelyn woke to sunlight streaming through the shutters and the sound of shovels scraping snow. The town was digging itself out. People calling to each other. The resumption of normal life. Caleb was already awake, dressed, standing by the window. "They'll see you leave," Evelyn said. "I know. They'll talk. I know. Silas will find out." "Good." Caleb turned to face her. "Let him find out. Let the whole town know. Maybe that'll make him think twice. Or it'll make things worse. Probably. But I'm done hiding. Spent 20 years hiding in the mountains. Didn't help. World still finds you eventually." Evelyn got out of bed and crossed to stand beside him. Outside, Black Hollow was white and pristine, sparkling in the morning sun, beautiful and treacherous. "What do we do now?" she asked. "You go to your store. I'll go to the livery, get my horse if she survived the storm. Then I'll come help you dig out." "Just like that?" just like that. And tonight? He looked at her. Where do you want me tonight? Here. Then I'll be here. It should have been more complicated. Should have required discussion, planning, careful consideration of consequences. But standing there with Caleb, watching the town come back to life, Evelyn realized she was done with careful consideration. She'd spent her whole life being careful, being practical, doing what made sense. For once, she was going to do what felt right. She kissed him once more, quick and hard, then pushed him toward the door. Go, before I decide to keep you here all day. He smiled, that barely there smile that made him look almost young. Yes, ma'am. Then he was gone, walking out into the bright snow, and Evelyn stood at the window watching him go. She saw Mrs. Henderson from the boarding house stop mid-shovel, her mouth falling open, saw Jacob Sterling nearly drop his load of firewood, saw half a dozen faces turn to stare as Caleb Rourke, the legendary mountain man, walked out of Evelyn Mercer's cabin at 7 o'clock in the morning. Let them stare. Let them talk. For the first time in 6 years, Evelyn Mercer was not invisible, and she was done apologizing for it. The gossip reached Evelyn's trading post before she did. She was still 2 blocks away, boots crunching through snow that came up past her ankles, when she heard the voices spilling out of Miller's dry goods across the street. Sharp, excited. The kind of talk that spread through small towns like wildfire through dead grass. Saw him with my own eyes, walking out of her place like he owned it. 3 whole days, Martha, can you imagine? Always knew she was peculiar, but this... Evelyn kept walking, unlocked the trading post, lit the stoves, started coffee. Did everything exactly the way she always did, even though her hands were shaking and her face felt hot. The first customer came in at 8:30. Mrs. Patricia Wells, wife of the assay office manager, who'd never said more than 10 words to Evelyn in 6 years. Today she had plenty to say. Miss Mercer. She didn't meet Evelyn's eyes, just set a list on the counter and stepped back like proximity might be contagious. I need these items. Quickly, please. Evelyn read the list. Flour, sugar, coffee, salt. Basic staples. She started gathering them while Mrs. Wells stood rigid near the door, radiating disapproval. Will there be anything else? Evelyn asked. No, just those items, and I'll be paying cash. I don't want an account here anymore. Your account's been open for 4 years. Yes, well, circumstances change. Mrs. Wells' mouth was a thin line. My husband and I feel it's best to conduct our business with establishments that maintain certain standards. Evelyn set the flour bag down harder than necessary. What standards would those be, Mrs. Wells? Decency, propriety, Christian values. I see. And which of those did I violate? The decency of saving a man's life, or the propriety of not letting him freeze to death on my doorstep? You know perfectly well what I'm referring to. The entire town saw him leaving your home this morning, a man you barely know. A dangerous vagrant, spending the night under your roof. It's disgraceful. He spent 3 nights under my roof, because there was a blizzard, because he would have died otherwise. Surely there were other arrangements. Like what? Should I have dragged him to the church and asked Reverend Hayes to keep him warm? Or maybe left him in a snowdrift and hoped for the best? Mrs. Wells flushed. Don't be crude. You could have maintained propriety, had witnesses present, made it clear that nothing inappropriate happened. That's not what people are saying. People, Evelyn said quietly, can say whatever they want. It doesn't make it true. She finished packing the order. $17.40. Mrs. Wells counted out exact change and left without another word, the door banging shut behind her. 3 more customers came and went before noon, all of them cool, distant, paying cash instead of on account, making it clear they were there out of necessity, not choice. Around 1 o'clock, Caleb showed up with his horse, a big roan mare who'd survived the storm in the livery, and a shovel. Where do you want me to start? He asked. Evelyn looked at the snow piled 4 feet high in front of the trading post, at the drifts blocking the warehouse door, at the entire town watching from windows and doorways to see what the scandalous spinster and her mountain man would do next. Warehouse first, she said. I need to get to the inventory before the next shipment comes. He nodded and got to work. Watching Caleb shovel snow was like watching a machine built for one specific purpose. No wasted motion, No stopping to rest, just steady, relentless progress. Within an hour, he'd cleared a path from the street to the warehouse entrance and started on the loading dock. People stared. Caleb ignored them. Around 2, Silas Crow rode up Main Street with 4 of his men. They stopped directly in front of the trading post, sat there on their horses, blocking traffic, making sure everyone could see. Silas dismounted slowly, adjusted his coat, walked to where Caleb was working. "Rourke." Caleb kept shoveling, didn't even look up. "I'm talking to you, mountain man." "I heard you." "Then you'll stop what you're doing and show some respect when your betters address you." Now Caleb stopped, set the shovel down, straightened to his full height, 6.5 feet of muscle and scars and quiet menace. Silas took an involuntary step back. "Something you need?" Caleb asked. "An explanation. You spent 3 nights in Miss Mercer's home during the storm." "I did." "Alone with her, unchaperoned." "Storm didn't leave much choice." "There's always a choice. You could have sought shelter elsewhere, the church, the boarding house, any number of appropriate locations. I was half frozen, barely conscious. Miss Mercer saved my life. If you've got a problem with that, take it up with the weather." Silas's face darkened. "Don't play games with me. You know exactly what you've done. You've compromised her reputation, made her unmarriageable, more unmarriageable than she already was. Decent men won't want anything to do with her now." "Then I guess it's lucky I'm not a decent man." The words fell like stones into still water. Around them, the watching crowd went silent. Silas stared. "What did you say?" "I said I'm not a decent man, never claimed to be. But I'm here. And I'm staying." "You're staying. That a problem for you?" "It's a problem for Miss Mercer. It's a problem for this town. We don't tolerate vagrancy or impropriety. We don't allow dangerous drifters to set up housekeeping with vulnerable women. I'm not a vagrant. I own property in the high country. I pay my taxes. And Miss Mercer isn't vulnerable. She's the strongest person I've met in 20 years. Evelyn heard that through the open door of the trading post, felt something crack open in her chest. Nobody had ever called her strong. Capable, yes. Competent, good with numbers. But not strong. Silas was done pretending civility. "Let me make this very simple. You're going to leave Black Hollow today. If you don't, I'll have the sheriff run you out. I'll make sure every business in town knows you're not welcome. You'll what?" Caleb's voice was still quiet, almost conversational, but something in it made Silas stop talking. "Threaten me? Try to run me off? I've been threatened by better men than you. Hasn't worked yet. I can make your life very difficult. My life's already difficult. I live in a cabin 10 miles past nowhere, hunt for food, melt snow for water, sleep with a rifle because wolves come sniffing around at night. You think you scare me?" Silas reached for something. Evelyn couldn't see what, but Caleb moved faster than a man his size should be able to move, caught Silas's wrist mid-reach and twisted just enough to make the other man gasp. "Don't," Caleb said. "Whatever you were reaching for, don't. Let go of me. When you calm down." They stood there frozen, Caleb holding Silas's wrist, Silas red-faced with fury and humiliation, the 4 ranch hands sitting on their horses trying to decide if this was worth getting killed over. Then Evelyn walked out of the trading post with her father's shotgun. She didn't point it at anyone, just held it casually, barrel pointed at the sky, in a way that suggested she knew exactly how to use it. "Mr. Crow," she said, "you're blocking access to my business. I'm going to have to ask you to move." Silas jerked his wrist free from Caleb's grip, stepped back. His face was white now, instead of red. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is. You've made your position clear. I've made mine. Unless you're here to buy something, I'd appreciate it if you'd leave. You're making a mistake, both of you." "Probably, but it's our mistake to make." Silas mounted his horse, looked down at Evelyn with something ugly in his eyes. "You had chances, multiple opportunities to do this the right way. You chose this. Remember that when everything falls apart." He rode off with his men. The watching crowd slowly dispersed, murmuring. Within minutes, the street was empty again except for Evelyn and Caleb standing in the trampled snow. "You didn't have to do that," Caleb said. "Yes, I did." "He's going to retaliate." "I know. Could lose everything." "I know that too." Evelyn lowered the shotgun. But I'm tired of being afraid, tired of saying yes to things I don't want just because someone powerful tells me I should. Caleb looked at her for a long moment. Then he picked up his shovel and went back to work. They finished clearing the snow by late afternoon. Evelyn made coffee and they sat in the warehouse office, both exhausted, neither talking about what had just happened. Finally, Caleb broke the silence. I can leave. If it helps. Go back to my cabin, stay out of town. Won't solve everything, but it might take some pressure off. No. Evelyn, no. You're not leaving because Silas Crow threw a tantrum. You're not leaving because the town decided to care about my reputation 6 years too late. She set her coffee down. And you're not leaving because I don't want you to. What do you want? Good question. What did she want? A week ago, the answer would have been simple: to be left alone, to keep her store, to survive. Now everything was complicated. I want, Evelyn said slowly, to not feel invisible anymore. I want someone who sees me, talks to me like I'm worth talking to, stays because they want to, not because they're obligated. I'm not good at staying. Then learn. It's been 20 years since I tried to live around people. Might have forgotten how. Me too. Guess we'll figure it out together. Caleb reached across the desk and took her hand. His palm was rough, scarred, warm. This is going to get worse before it gets better. You know that. I know. Crow's not going to let this go. Men like him don't. So what do? We get ready. Make sure your accounts are in order, your inventory documented, your property taxes paid, every contract witnessed and filed. Make it hard for him to find leverage. You've done this before. I've seen it before. Rich men squeezing small landholders. Intimidation. Legal harassment, sometimes violence. Best defense is being prepared. Evelyn thought about her ledgers, her father's old contracts, the deed to the store that was filed somewhere in the territorial office in Cheyenne. She'd been running on habit for years, not really paying attention to the details. That was going to change. They worked until dark organizing paperwork, checking accounts, making lists of everything that needed to be verified or updated. Boring work. Necessary work. The kind of thing that might mean the difference between keeping the store and losing it. Around 8 o'clock, someone knocked on the front door. Evelyn and Caleb both went still. The knock came again, louder. Miss Mercer, it's Doc Harrison. Need to talk to you. Evelyn unlocked the door. Doc Harrison stood on the porch, snow on his shoulders, medical bag in hand. He was 65, mostly bald, and one of the few people in Black Hollow who didn't seem to care what anyone thought of him. You going to invite me in, or do I have to conduct business on your doorstep? She stepped aside. Come in, Doc. He walked past her, nodded at Caleb. Rourke, heard you were back in town. Also heard you survived 3 days in a blizzard that killed 2 miners and a prospector. That true? Mostly. Mostly he survived, or mostly he was in a blizzard? Both. Doc Harrison snorted. Let me see your hands. They're fine. I'm the doctor. I'll decide what's fine. Hands. Caleb held out his hands. The doctor examined them carefully, checking each finger, pressing the nail beds to test circulation. Did the same with Caleb's feet once he got his boots off. Looked at his ears. You're lucky, Harrison said. No permanent damage I can see. Mild frostbite on 2 fingers and your left ear, but nothing that won't heal. You should be dead. So people keep telling me. Who treated you during the storm? I did, Evelyn said. Harrison looked at her. You know anything about frostbite treatment? My father used to lecture about it. Said it killed more miners than cave-ins. He was right. What did you do? Got him warm gradually, not too fast, gave him hot drinks, kept him by the stove, but not too close, massaged his fingers and toes to restore circulation. And that worked? He's alive. He's alive, Harrison agreed. He packed up his medical bag. You did good work, Miss Mercer. Probably saved his life. I know. Then you also know that saving someone's life tends to create certain obligations, in the eyes of some people anyway. Evelyn crossed her arms. If you're here to lecture me about propriety, Doc, you can save your breath. I'm not here to lecture anyone. I'm here to offer advice. He looked between them. Silas Crow is angry, very angry. He's been making calls, talking to people. There's going to be consequences. What kind of consequences? The legal kind. Maybe the violent kind. Depends how desperate he gets. Harrison moved toward the door. My advice? Get ahead of it. Make everything official. Give the gossip something concrete to talk about instead of letting them speculate. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that an engaged couple living together is scandalous but understandable. A woman and a vagrant shacked up during a storm is grounds for shunning. He opened the door. Just something to think about. After he left, Evelyn and Caleb sat in silence. He's right, Caleb said finally. About what? About making it official, giving the town something they can accept. You mean getting engaged? Yes. To make me respectable. To protect you. There's a difference. Evelyn stood and paced to the window. Outside, Black Hollow was dark except for scattered lamplight. Her town, the place she'd lived her entire life. And suddenly it felt like enemy territory. I don't want protection, she said. I want... She stopped. What did she want? I don't know. Something real. Not a performance for Silas Crow and the Methodist ladies. Caleb came to stand behind her, close enough that she could feel his warmth but not touching. What if it wasn't a performance? She turned. What? What if I actually wanted to marry you? Not because the town expects it. Not to give you protection, because I haven't felt this alive in 20 years. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you dragged a half-frozen stranger into your house and saved his life. I know you stood up to Silas Crow with a shotgun when you could have just given him what he wanted. I know you're honest and stubborn and braver than you think you are. Those aren't reasons to get married. Why not? Because... Evelyn struggled for words. Because marriage should be about love, about building a life together, not about convenience or protection or making other people shut up. And you don't think we could build a life together? I don't know. Maybe. But not like this. Not with Silas breathing down our necks and the whole town watching, not as some kind of strategic move. Caleb was quiet. Then, okay. Okay? Okay. No engagement announcement, no strategic marriage. We do this our way, on our timeline, if we do it at all. And Silas? We deal with him when he makes his move, because he will make a move. Caleb touched her face, gentle. But we don't let him dictate our choices. That's what he wants. Control. We don't give it to him. Evelyn leaned into his hand. This is going to be a disaster. Probably. We're going to lose everything. Maybe. You could still leave. Go back to your cabin. None of this is your problem. Yes, it is, Caleb said. Because you're not just some woman I helped during a storm. You're... He stopped. Started again. You're the first person in 20 years who looked at me and saw a man instead of a monster. You were never a monster. Tell that to the people I killed. You killed them because they deserved it. That's not how the law sees it. Then the law's wrong. He kissed her, slow and careful and devastating. When they broke apart, Evelyn was shaking. Stay tonight, she said. Tomorrow we figure out what comes next, but tonight, just stay. Your reputation is already destroyed. Might as well enjoy the scandal. They walked back to her cabin together through snow that glittered under starlight. Didn't bother hiding, didn't sneak, just walked down Main Street like they had every right to be together, which they did. Inside, Evelyn lit the lamps while Caleb built up the fire. They ate bread and cheese because neither of them felt like cooking. Sat at the small table and talked about nothing important. Weather, horses, whether spring would come early this year. Normal things, easy things, the kind of conversation people had when they were comfortable with each other. Around midnight, Evelyn stood. I'm going to bed. You can have the floor again, or you can have the bed. With me. She said it plainly. No games, no flirtation, just an honest offer. Caleb stood too. Are you sure? No, but I'm tired of being careful. Tired of doing what's proper instead of what I want. And what do you want? You, here, now. No more waiting for permission from people who don't matter. He crossed to her, took her hands. I'm not good at this. At being gentle. Being what someone needs. Then be what you are, that's enough. What happened next wasn't smooth or practiced or anything like the romance novels Evelyn had read as a girl. It was fumbling and uncertain and real. Two people who'd been alone too long, trying to remember how to be close to someone. But it was honest, and for the first time in 39 years, Evelyn Mercer felt chosen. She woke before dawn to find Caleb already awake, staring at the ceiling. "What are you thinking?" she asked. "That Silas is going to move soon, today, probably. He's had time to plan." "What will he do?" "I don't know, but something public, something that forces your hand." Evelyn sat up, pulled the blanket around her shoulders. "Let him try." "You're not worried?" "I'm terrified, but I'm also done running." She looked at Caleb. "Whatever he does, we face it together. Deal?" "Deal." They got dressed, had coffee, walked to the trading post as the sun came up, painting the snow gold and pink. The door was already open. Evelyn froze. She knew she'd locked it. Double-checked before leaving yesterday. Caleb put a hand on her arm. "Stay here." Like hell. They went in together. The store was a mess. Shelves overturned, merchandise scattered, the cash register broken open, empty. But that wasn't the worst of it. On the counter, held down by a rock, was an official-looking document. Evelyn picked it up with shaking hands. It was a foreclosure notice. According to the paper, her father had taken out a loan 6 years ago, $15,000 from the First Territorial Bank of Wyoming. The loan had been in default for 3 years. The bank was exercising its right to seize the property to cover the debt. She had 48 hours to vacate. "This is impossible," Evelyn said. "My father never took out a loan. I've gone through every paper he owned. There's no—" She stopped, looked at the signature at the bottom of the document. Thomas Mercer, her father's signature. Perfect. Exact. Forged. "Silas," she whispered. Caleb took the paper from her. "Read it carefully. This is legal, or looks legal, notarized, witnessed, filed with the territorial government 3 years ago. It's fake. It has to be. Probably. But proving it's fake will take time. Lawyers, money you don't have." Evelyn looked around her father's store. The business he'd built from nothing, the legacy he'd left her, the only thing she had in the world. 48 hours. She sat down hard on an overturned crate and put her head in her hands. "I'm going to lose everything." Caleb knelt in front of her. "No, you're not." "Did you read that document? I have 2 days." "I read it, and I know what it means." His voice was quiet, certain. But Silas made a mistake. He got angry, moved too fast, left evidence. "What evidence?" "This." He tapped the foreclosure notice. "This is too perfect, too clean. No bank sits on a defaulted loan for 3 years without trying to collect. No bank forecloses the day after a public argument." He got sloppy. "What do we do?" Caleb stood. "We fight back, but not here. Not on his terms." He pulled Evelyn to her feet. "How well do you know Silas's operation, his businesses?" "Not well. He keeps things separate. Different managers, different accounts." "Where does he keep his records?" "His house, probably. The big place on the hill. Why?" Caleb smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a man who'd survived 20 years in the wilderness by being smarter and meaner than everything trying to kill him. "Because," he said, "I'm going to pay Mr. Crow a visit, and I'm going to find out exactly what he's hiding." "You're not breaking into Silas Crow's house," Evelyn said. They were back in her cabin, the foreclosure notice spread on the table between them like a death sentence. Outside, dawn was breaking over Black Hollow, turning the snow from gray to gold. "I'm not breaking in," Caleb said. "I'm entering without permission. There's a difference." That's exactly what breaking in means. Breaking in implies force, damage. I'll be quiet about it. Evelyn stood and paced to the window. Her hands were shaking. Everything was shaking. Her hands, her voice, the foundations of the life she'd built. 48 hours. 2 days to lose everything her father had worked for. "This is insane," she said. "If you get caught, I won't." "You don't know that. Silas has guards, dogs. The Garrett brothers probably sleep in his barn. You'll get shot, or arrested, or both. I've gotten into worse places." "When? Where?" Caleb was quiet for a moment. "Pennsylvania, 1867. The night before I left. Broke into the judge's house to get evidence that his son was beating women. Needed proof before I ran." "Did you find it?" "Found enough. ledgers showing payments to keep victims quiet, letters, photographs. His jaw tightened. Judge burned it all the next day, but I saw it, knew I was right. And that's supposed to make me feel better? It's supposed to show you I've done this before. I know what I'm doing. Evelyn turned from the window, looked at this man who'd walked into her life less than a week ago and somehow become the only thing standing between her and complete destruction. He was watching her with those winter gray eyes, calm and certain, like breaking into the most powerful man in Wyoming's house was a reasonable Tuesday morning activity. What if you're wrong? She asked. What if there's no evidence? What if Silas really did get my father to sign that loan and I just never knew about it? Then we find another way. There is no other way. The foreclosure is legal. I can't fight it without proof. So I'll get you proof. And if you can't? Caleb crossed to her, put his hands on her shoulders. Then we leave. Pack what matters, get on horses, and ride north. Montana territory. Canada if we have to. Start over somewhere Silas Crow's name means nothing. I can't just abandon everything. You can if the alternative is losing it anyway. At least this way you choose the terms. Evelyn wanted to argue, wanted to insist there had to be a rational solution, a legal remedy, some way to fight this that didn't involve felonies and midnight raids. But she'd lived in Black Hollow her whole life. She knew how power worked in small towns, knew that men like Silas didn't lose unless someone made them lose. When? She asked. Tonight. Moon's nearly full. Enough light to see, not so much I'll cast shadows. How will you get in? Haven't figured that out yet. Need to see the house first, study the layout. I've been there once, Evelyn said. 3 years ago. Silas hosted a territorial commerce meeting. My father was invited. Brought me along because he wasn't feeling well. What do you remember? She closed her eyes, trying to pull details from a memory she'd barely paid attention to at the time. Big house, 2 stories, stone foundation, timber upper floor, main entrance faces south, servant's entrance on the east side. Silas's private office was on the 2nd floor, northwest corner. I remember because he made a point of showing it off. Custom desk, imported from Boston, safe built into the wall behind a painting. You remember which painting? Some landscape, mountains, river, generic rich person art. Guards? 2 at the main gate. Didn't see any inside the house, but that was during a party. Could be different now. Caleb nodded, processing. I'll need to get close, see the current setup. There's a ridge above his property, west side. You can see most of the grounds from there. How do you know that? Used to ride up there when I was younger, before my father got sick. There's a trail the miners use to access the upper claims. Show me. They spent the morning preparing. Evelyn drew a rough map of Silas' property from memory. The house, the barn, the bunkhouse where his ranch hand stayed, the fence line. Marked the places she remembered guards being posted. Caleb studied it silently, occasionally asking questions. The safe. How big? Maybe 3 feet square. Black metal. Combination lock. You know the combination? Of course not. Doesn't matter. I can open it. You know how to crack safes? I know how to listen. Metal makes sounds when you turn the dial. You pay attention. You can figure out the sequence. Evelyn stared at him. What exactly did you do before you became a mountain man? Things I'm not proud of. Things I got good at anyway. Around noon, they rode up to the ridge. Took the trail slowly, carefully, like they were just 2 people out for a casual ride, despite the fact that Evelyn's stomach was churning and her hands wouldn't stop shaking. From the ridge, Silas Crow's house looked like a monument to excess. 3 stories of imported timber and glass, completely out of place in the rough Wyoming landscape. Smoke rose from multiple chimneys. The barn was bigger than most houses. Fenced paddocks held expensive horses that probably cost more than Evelyn's entire inventory. Caleb lay flat on the ridge, studying the property through a small brass telescope he pulled from his saddlebag. 2 guards at the main gate, he said, one walking the perimeter. Looks like he circles every 20 minutes. Lights in the kitchen, the main hall, and 2 upstairs rooms. One of those is probably Silas's office. Northwest corner? Yes, good memory. What about dogs? Don't see any, but they might be inside. They watched for an hour. The perimeter guard made 3 complete circuits. A woman, housekeeper probably, came out to shake rugs. A ranch hand led a horse from the barn to the paddock. Routine. Predictable. I can do this, Caleb said finally. How? Wait until after midnight. Most people sleep deepest between 2 and 4 in the morning. Perimeter guard will be tired, might get sloppy. He pointed. There's a blind spot on the east side where the barn blocks the view from the gate. I go in there, stay low, get to the servants' entrance, which is probably locked. Locks can be picked, and if someone hears you, they won't. His certainty should have been reassuring. Instead, it just reminded Evelyn how little she actually knew about this man. A week ago, he'd been a legend, a story miners told around campfires. Now he was lying beside her planning to commit burglary, and she was helping him do it. They rode back to town in silence. The rest of the day crawled past like injured time. Evelyn tried to work in the trading post, cleaning up the mess from the break-in, taking inventory of what had been stolen or destroyed. But every time someone walked past the window, her heart jumped. Around 3, Sheriff Bennett showed up. He was a tired-looking man in his 50s, with a badge that was more political appointment than law enforcement credential. He'd been sheriff for 6 years and had never arrested anyone more dangerous than Saturday night drunks. Miss Mercer, he took off his hat, heard you had some trouble. Someone broke in last night, destroyed merchandise, stole the cash box. Any idea who? I have suspicions. Care to share them? Evelyn looked at him, at the way he wouldn't quite meet her eyes, at the nervous way he twisted his hat brim. Did Silas Crow send you, Sheriff? Bennett's face reddened. I'm here in my official capacity, investigating a reported break-in. Right. And the fact that Silas is on the town council and controls half the territorial budget has nothing to do with it. Miss Mercer, did he also mention the foreclosure notice? The one claiming my father took out a loan I've never heard of? That's a civil matter between you and the bank he owns. He's a shareholder. That's different. Is it? Evelyn leaned against the counter. She was so tired of fighting. Tired of watching people she'd known her whole life choose money over honesty. You know what, Sheriff? You're right. This is a civil matter. So unless you're planning to actually investigate this break-in, I'd appreciate it if you'd leave. I'm trying to help. No, you're not. You're trying to cover for Silas Crow while maintaining plausible deniability. So do your job or get out. Bennett put his hat back on. You're making a mistake. Crow's offering you a fair price. More than fair. You should take it. And if I don't, then you'll lose everything anyway. The hard way. He moved toward the door. I'm sorry, Miss Mercer. I truly am. But this is bigger than me. After he left, Evelyn sat down on the floor and cried. Not pretty crying, not quiet tears. Full-body sobs that came from somewhere deep and primal, from the place where she'd been storing 39 years of invisible pain. That's where Caleb found her an hour later. He didn't say anything, just sat down beside her on the floor and waited. I can't do this, Evelyn said when she could finally talk. I can't fight him. He owns everything, the bank, the sheriff, probably the judge too. What's the point? The point, Caleb said quietly, is that you're still here, still fighting. That matters. Does it? In 48 hours, I'll be homeless. The store will belong to Silas. Everything my father built will be gone. Maybe. Or maybe I find something tonight that changes everything. And if you don't, then we figure out what comes next. Evelyn looked at him. Why are you doing this? You barely know me. This isn't your fight. Yes, it is. Why? He was quiet for a long moment. Because 20 years ago, I watched powerful men destroy someone who couldn't fight back. And I ran instead of helping, been running ever since. Maybe this is me trying to stop. I'm not your redemption, Caleb. I know, but maybe helping you helps me too. Is that so wrong? She didn't have an answer for that. They spent the evening going over the plan again and again. Caleb would wait until 2 in the morning. Approach from the east, pick the lock on the servant's entrance, find Silas's office, crack the safe, get out. Simple. Except nothing was simple when you were talking about breaking into a rich man's house in the middle of the night. What if the combination doesn't work? Evelyn asked. Then I improvise. What does that mean? It means I find another way. That's not reassuring. It's not supposed to be reassuring, it's supposed to be honest. At 11 o'clock, Caleb started preparing. Changed into dark clothes. checked his knife, packed a small leather case with lockpicks and other tools Evelyn didn't recognize. "Where did you learn to do this?" she asked. "War. Then after. When you're trying to stay alive behind enemy lines, you learn all kinds of useful skills." "You were a scout?" "Something like that." He didn't elaborate. Evelyn was starting to understand that there were parts of Caleb's past he didn't talk about, couldn't talk about. Things that had shaped him into someone who could move like smoke and pick locks and plan midnight raids like it was normal. At 1:30, he kissed her. "If I'm not back by dawn, don't come looking for me." "The hell I won't. Evelyn, if you're not back by dawn, I'm riding up there myself, with the shotgun, so you better come back." He smiled slightly. "Yes, ma'am." Then he was gone, disappearing into the darkness like he'd never been there at all. Evelyn tried to sleep, couldn't, paced her cabin, made coffee, dumped it out. Made more. Watched the clock tick toward 2, then 3, then 4. He should be back by now, 4:30. Still nothing, 5 o'clock. The sky was starting to lighten in the east. Evelyn grabbed the shotgun and her coat. She was halfway to the door when she heard footsteps outside. Froze. The door opened and Caleb slipped inside, breathing hard, covered in sweat despite the cold. He was carrying a leather satchel. "Did you—" "Got it." He dropped the satchel on the table. "Everything. Ledgers, contracts, letters, all of it." Evelyn's hands shook as she opened the satchel. Inside were stacks of papers, organized and indexed, like Silas kept his crimes as meticulously as his legitimate business. She pulled out the first document, a contract between Silas and the Territorial Bank dated 4 years ago. Clause 17 authorized the bank to create fictional loans using forged signatures to acquire property. The next document was a ledger, payments to county officials, the sheriff, the judge, the Territorial Land Office clerk, all in Silas's handwriting. There were letters, dozens of them. Correspondence with business partners in Cheyenne and Denver discussing property acquisitions, strategic foreclosures, methods for forcing sales. And there, at the bottom of the satchel, was a file labeled Mercer. Inside was the original foreclosure document, with notes in Silas's handwriting, forge father's signature, back date to 1877, file with clerk, usual payment. Proof. Complete, undeniable proof. "This is it," Evelyn whispered. "This is everything we need." "Not everything. We still need someone willing to act on it." "The Territorial Marshal, Fort Bridger. You said you knew him." "Gideon Barrett." "Yeah, I know him. Saved his life during a Shoshone dispute 5 years ago. He owes me." "How far is Fort Bridger?" 40 miles. Hard riding, maybe 6 hours. Then we leave now, before Silas realizes what's missing. Caleb shook his head. "You leave now. I stay." "What? No. We go together. If we both disappear, Silas will know something's wrong. He'll send men after us. Maybe catch us before we reach the fort." He gripped her shoulders. "But if you go alone quiet, like you're just running errands, you've got a chance. I'll stay here. Make noise. Make sure everyone knows I'm still in town." "He'll kill you." "He'll try." "Caleb, listen to me. This only works if you get those documents to Barrett. That's the priority. Not me, not your store. Getting justice." His eyes were intense. "Can you do that?" Evelyn wanted to say no. Wanted to insist they stick together. But she'd run a business for 6 years. She understood strategy. Understood that sometimes the smart play wasn't the one you wanted. "I can do it," she said. "Good. Take your fastest horse, ride hard. Don't stop until you reach the fort." "What will you do?" "I'll make sure Silas is too busy with me to worry about you." "How?" Caleb smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "I'm going to do what I should have done yesterday. Walk into his house in broad daylight and tell him exactly what I think of him. That's suicide." "Maybe. But it'll keep his attention off you. That's what matters." They packed quickly. Evelyn took the satchel, some food, her father's pistol. Caleb saddled her horse, a quick mare named Rosie, who'd never let her down. As the sun rose over Black Hollow, Evelyn mounted up. "If this goes wrong, she started. "It won't. But if it does, then I'll meet you in Montana, that place we talked about, by the lake." They'd never talked about Montana, never discussed a lake. But Evelyn understood what he was doing. giving her something to hold on to, a future that might never happen but felt possible anyway. Montana, she agreed, by the lake. She rode out of town heading east, like she was going to the neighboring settlement for supplies. Once she was out of sight, she'd circle north and push for Fort Bridger. Behind her, Caleb stood in the street watching her go. And in the big house on the hill, Silas Crow was probably just waking up, with no idea that his entire criminal empire was currently riding away in a leather satchel. Evelyn pushed Rosie hard. The mare was tired within an hour, but kept going, sensing the urgency. The trail to Fort Bridger was rough. Mountain passes, frozen streams, sections where the snow was deep enough to slow them to a walk, but they made progress. Around noon, Evelyn heard horses behind her, distant but getting closer. She urged Rosie faster, but the mare was already giving everything she had. The riders gained, 3 of them. She recognized the Garrett brothers and one of Silas's other men. They caught up with her 5 miles from the fort. "Miss Mercer," the older Garrett, Frank, pulled alongside. "You're needed back in town. Get away from me. Mr. Crow wants to talk to you." "I'm not interested in what Mr. Crow wants." "Wasn't a request." Frank grabbed Rosie's reins. Evelyn yanked them free and pulled the pistol from her coat. "Touch my horse again, and I'll shoot you." All 3 men went still. "Now that's not friendly," Frank said. "We're just doing our jobs." "Your job is intimidating women for a criminal. I'm not impressed." "You're making this harder than it needs to be." "Good!" She fired a shot over their heads. The sound echoed across the valley. Frank's horse reared. By the time he got it under control, Evelyn was already galloping toward the fort. They chased her. She could hear them shouting, their horses pounding the frozen ground. But she was lighter. Rosie was faster on rough terrain. And Evelyn had 40 years of Wyoming survival instinct telling her exactly where to push, where to slow down, where to let the mare pick her own path. Fort Bridger appeared ahead, a cluster of buildings surrounded by a wooden palisade, the American flag snapping in the wind. Evelyn didn't slow down, galloped straight for the main gate, the Garrett brothers 50 yards behind. Guards at the gate raised their rifles. "Federal business," Evelyn shouted. "I need to see Marshal Barrett. Ma'am, you need to talk now. It's urgent." She pulled Rosie up hard. The mare's hooves skidded on ice. Evelyn dismounted before the horse fully stopped, stumbled, caught herself. The Garrett brothers pulled up at the gate. "That woman is wanted for questioning," Frank said. "We're taking her back to Black Hollow." "Under whose authority?" one of the guards asked. "Silas Crow, he owns—" "This is federal land. Silas Crow owns nothing here." The guard looked at Evelyn. "You said you have federal business?" "I need to see Marshal Barrett. I have evidence of fraud, forgery, and corruption involving territorial officials." "That's a serious claim." "I have documentation. In this satchel. Please." The guard studied her, looked at the Garrett brothers, made a decision. "You 3 wait here. Ma'am, come with me." He led Evelyn into the fort. Through the gate, past the barracks, to a stone building flying the marshal's flag. Inside, a man stood behind a desk covered in maps. He was maybe 50, weather-beaten, with gray in his beard and eyes that had seen too much. "Marshal Barrett?" He looked up. "That's me? Who are you?" "Evelyn Mercer, from Black Hollow. Caleb Rourke sent me." Barrett's expression changed. "Caleb? Haven't seen him in 3 years. He all right?" "For now, but we need your help." She set the satchel on his desk. "There's a man in Black Hollow, Silas Crow. He's been using fraud and bribery to steal property, including mine. Caleb broke into his house last night and found proof. All of it's in here." Barrett opened the satchel, started reading. His face got darker with each document. After 10 minutes, he looked up. "This is enough to hang him." "Then you'll help?" "I'll do better than help. I'll arrest him myself." He called for his deputy. "Get horses ready. Full detail. We're riding to Black Hollow." "How many men?" the deputy asked. "All of them." Within an hour, they were riding back. Evelyn, Marshal Barrett, and 20 federal deputies. The Garrett brothers were nowhere to be seen. Probably rode ahead to warn Silas. Let them warn him, Evelyn thought. Let him know what's coming. They reached Black Hollow around sunset. The town went quiet as 20 armed federal deputies rode down Main Street. Evelyn led them straight to Silas Crow's house. He was standing on the porch, waiting. The Garrett brothers flanked him. 6 other men with rifles were positioned around the property. Barrett rode forward. Silas Crow. I'm U.S. Marshal Gideon Barrett. You're under arrest for fraud, forgery, bribery of federal officials, and conspiracy to deprive citizens of property rights. Under whose authority? The United States government. Step down from that porch. I don't think so. This is my property. You're trespassing. We have evidence. Ledgers, contracts, written in your hand, documenting years of criminal activity. For the first time, uncertainty crossed Silas's face. Where did you... Doesn't matter where we got it. Matters that we have it. Now step down peacefully or we'll come get you. Silas looked at Evelyn, his face twisted with rage. You did this. You sent that animal into my house. I didn't send anyone anywhere, but yes, I delivered the evidence. Every forged signature, every bribed official, every illegal foreclosure. She smiled coldly. You made a mistake, Mr. Crow. You thought I was weak. Thought I'd just give up because you're powerful and I'm nobody. But you forgot something. What? Nobody has nothing left to lose. Barrett's deputies moved forward, surrounded the house. The rifles Silas's men were holding suddenly seemed inadequate against 20 federal officers. Last chance, Barrett said. Come peacefully. Silas looked around, at his men lowering their weapons, at the crowd gathering to watch, at his empire crumbling in real time. He walked down from the porch. Barrett's deputy cuffed him. As they led him toward a wagon, Silas looked back at Evelyn. This isn't over. I have lawyers, connections in Denver and Washington. Then you'll need them, Evelyn said. Because I'm not stopping until every property you stole is returned, every person you bribed is exposed, every crime you committed is documented. You can't watch me. They put him in the wagon, locked the door. The crowd was growing now. Half the town watching Silas Crow, the man who'd controlled Black Hollow for 15 years, hauled away in chains. Evelyn turned away. She didn't need to watch. She'd already won. But there was one more thing she needed to do. She found Caleb at her cabin. He was sitting on the porch, his rifle across his knees like he'd been expecting trouble. When he saw her, relief flooded his face. You made it. I made it. She climbed the steps, sat beside him. Barrett arrested Silas. He's gone. It's over. Is it? I think so. They sat in silence while the sun set over Black Hollow. Around them, the town was alive with gossip and speculation. But up here, on this small porch, it was quiet. What now? Caleb asked. Now? Evelyn leaned against him. Now I figure out what to do with the trading post I actually get to keep. Maybe hire some help. Maybe expand. Haven't decided yet. And us? What about us? Do I stay? Go back to the mountains? What do you want? Evelyn thought about it, about the lonely cabin in the high country, about her life in Black Hollow, about the fact that a week ago she'd been invisible, and now she was the woman who'd brought down Silas Crow. Everything had changed. Everything. Stay, she said. At least for a while, see how it feels. People will talk. Let them talk. I'm done caring what people think. Caleb put his arm around her. They watched the stars come out over Wyoming, and for the first time in 20 years for him and 39 years for her, neither of them felt alone. The story should have ended there. But it didn't. Because 3 days later, the Territorial Bank tried to enforce the foreclosure anyway, claiming the arrest didn't invalidate the original loan. Because Silas had friends in Denver who started a legal campaign to get him released. Because victory, Evelyn was learning, was never as simple as it seemed. But for tonight, sitting on her porch with a man who'd risked everything to help her, Evelyn Mercer let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, the hard part was over. She was wrong, but she didn't know that yet. The banker arrived on Monday morning with 2 lawyers and a smirk that said he thought he'd already won. His name was Chester Rollins, vice president of the First Territorial Bank of Wyoming, and he walked into Evelyn's trading post like he owned it, which, according to the papers he slapped on her counter, he did. Miss Mercer, I'm here to inform you that despite Mr. Crow's recent legal troubles, the foreclosure on this property remains valid and enforceable. Evelyn was stocking shelves. Didn't stop. Didn't even turn around. Marshal Barrett sees those documents as evidence of fraud. The loan itself predates any alleged fraud. The debt is legitimate. The signature is forged. That's a matter for the courts to decide. Until then, the bank's lien stands. Rollins pulled out a pocket watch, checked it ostentatiously. You have until Friday to vacate. After that, we'll remove you forcibly if necessary. Now Evelyn turned. You're bluffing. Am I? Silas Crow is in custody, yes, but the bank operates independently. Our board of directors has reviewed the loan documents and determined them to be valid. The foreclosure will proceed. Your board of directors includes 3 men who took bribes from Silas. That was in the evidence. Rollins' smirk faltered. Allegations. Nothing proven. Yet. Miss Mercer, you're a businesswoman. Surely you understand the reality of your situation. You can fight this in court for years, spending money you don't have on lawyers you can't afford, or you can accept the inevitable and move on with your life. I'll take option 3. There is no option 3. Option 3, Evelyn said, is I tell everyone in Black Hollow that the bank knowingly foreclosed on forged documents. I print handbills. I stand on Main Street and explain to every miner, every rancher, every family with savings at your bank exactly how you operate. See how many customers you have left by Sunday. The 2 lawyers exchanged glances. Rollins' face reddened. That's slander. It's truth. There's a difference. She crossed her arms. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to take your foreclosure notice and leave. Then you're going to convince your board to withdraw the claim before Marshall Barrett adds banking fraud to Silas's charges. Or I destroy your reputation so thoroughly, you'll be managing a bank in Montana by fall. Your choice. Rollins stared at her. This wasn't the frightened spinster he'd expected. This was someone who'd gone to war with Silas Crow and won. You're making a very serious mistake, he said. Wouldn't be my first, won't be my last. Now get out of my store. They left. But Evelyn knew it wasn't over. Banks didn't surrender easily, especially when powerful people were involved. She was right. By Wednesday, the bank had filed an injunction with the territorial court demanding immediate possession of the trading post. By Thursday, 3 of Evelyn's regular customers had closed their accounts, citing pressure from their employers, who all did business with the bank. By Friday, someone had painted "thief" across her front window. Evelyn scrubbed it off while half the town watched. Nobody helped. Nobody even acknowledged her. She'd become invisible again, but this time it was intentional, calculated. The town was choosing sides, and most of them were choosing the bank. They're afraid, Caleb said that night. They were in her cabin, eating stew that Evelyn had burned because she couldn't focus on cooking. Bank threatens to call their loans, foreclose their properties. They're protecting themselves. By abandoning me, by surviving, can't fault people for that. I can absolutely fault them for that. Evelyn threw her spoon down. I've lived here my whole life, served these people for 6 years. And the moment things get difficult, they turn their backs. That's what people do, protect their own interests. You do the same. No, I wouldn't. Yes, you would. You are. You're fighting to keep your store even though walking away might be easier. That's different. Is it? Evelyn stood and paced to the window. Outside, Black Hollow was dark except for scattered lamplight. Her town. The place she'd spent 39 years trying to belong to. I don't want to lose, she said quietly. I don't want them to win. Then don't lose. How? The bank has lawyers, political connections, money. What do I have? You have Marshall Barrett's evidence, you have me, and you have something they don't. What's that? Nothing left to lose. Evelyn turned. Caleb was leaning against the wall, arms crossed, watching her with those winter gray eyes that saw too much. What are you suggesting? She asked. I'm suggesting we stop playing their game. Stop fighting on their terms. Make them fight on ours. Which means what, exactly? Which means we don't wait for the court to rule. We don't let the bank dictate the timeline. We take the fight to them. How? Caleb smiled. It was the dangerous smile. The one that said he'd survived 20 years in the wilderness by being smarter and meaner than everything trying to kill him. We make them famous, every crooked deal, every bribed official, every forged document. We tell the whole territory exactly what they've done. The evidence is sealed. Marshall Barrett can't release it until trial. Barrett can't. But you can talk about what you saw. I can talk about what I found. We can tell our story. Let people decide for themselves. That'll take months. The foreclosure hearing is in 2 weeks. So we move faster. Over the next 3 days, Evelyn and Caleb became a two-person newspaper. They wrote everything down, every detail of Silas's fraud, every name in the bribery ledgers, every forged signature. Then they made copies, dozens of them, handed them out to everyone in Black Hollow. Most people crumpled them up without reading. Some read and looked away, uncomfortable. A few, just a few, read and got angry. Old Pete Hutchins was one. He showed up at the trading post on Tuesday morning with his copy covered in angry notes. "This says Silas bribed the county assessor to inflate my property taxes." "That's right," Evelyn said. "I've been paying triple what I should for 5 years?" According to his ledger, yes. Pete's weathered face went crimson. "That son of a bitch." That's one way to put it. "What are you going to do about it?" "I'm going to make sure everyone knows. Starting with the territorial newspaper in Laramie. I've already sent them a copy." "That'll cause trouble." "Good. I'm tired of being the only one in trouble." Word spread. By Wednesday, the Laramie Sentinel had sent a reporter. By Thursday, the story was front-page news. Corruption in Black Hollow. Land Baron Silas Crow accused of systematic fraud. The article detailed everything. Forged loans, bribed officials, properties stolen. It named names, published excerpts from the ledgers, made the whole territory pay attention. The bank's lawyers showed up Friday morning, threatening lawsuits for defamation. Evelyn showed them the door. "Sue me. I have nothing worth taking except a store you're already trying to steal. See how that looks to a jury." They left. But that afternoon, something changed. The Territorial Attorney General's office sent a representative. A serious woman in her 40s named Margaret Walsh, who examined Evelyn's documents for 3 hours without speaking. Finally, she looked up. "This is extraordinary evidence. If it's authentic." "It's authentic," Evelyn said. "Marshall Barrett verified it." "Then Mr. Crow is facing federal charges, possibly territorial charges as well. Bank fraud, corruption of public officials, conspiracy." Walsh tapped the papers. "But that doesn't necessarily void the foreclosure. The loan document predates most of the criminal activity. The loan is forged. My father never signed it." "Can you prove that?" "Can they prove he did?" "They have a notarized document with his signature. I have 6 years of my father's correspondence, bills of sale, contracts, letters, hundreds of examples of his real signature. None of them match the foreclosure document." Walsh sat back. "That might work, but you'd need a handwriting expert, someone credible." "How much does that cost?" "More than you have." Evelyn felt the familiar weight settling on her chest. Money. Always money. The universal weapon of powerful people against everyone else. "However," Walsh continued, "the territorial government has an interest in rooting out corruption. If we could prove systematic fraud, not just against you, but against multiple property owners, we could justify the expense of an investigation. There are others. In Silas's ledgers, at least a dozen properties acquired through similar methods." "Do you have their names?" "I have everything." Walsh stood. "Get me a list. Full documentation. I'll take it to the Attorney General. No promises. But if we can build a case that benefits the territory, not just you personally, we might be able to help." She left. Evelyn sat in the empty store and tried not to hope. Hope was dangerous. Hope got you hurt when it collapsed. But despite her best efforts, hope crept in anyway. That night, Evelyn and Caleb worked until midnight, compiling names and addresses of everyone listed in Silas's ledgers. Miners who'd lost claims, ranchers who'd been forced to sell, families evicted from properties they'd owned for years. 23 names, 23 families destroyed by one man's greed. "If even half of these people testify," Evelyn said, "Silas won't see daylight for 20 years. "If they testify, that's a big if. Why wouldn't they? Because testifying means admitting they were victims, means reliving trauma, means making themselves targets." Caleb looked at the list. "People don't always want justice. Sometimes they just want to forget. Then I'll remind them why it matters." Over the next week, Evelyn visited every name on the list. Some were still in the area. Others had moved away, chased out by Silas's schemes. A few were dead. The ones she found reacted differently. Some were eager to help, angry and ready to fight. Others were frightened, unwilling to testify against a man with powerful friends. A few slammed doors in her face. But by the end of the week, she had 9 sworn statements. 9 people willing to stand up and say Silas Crow had destroyed their lives. She delivered them to Margaret Walsh personally. Walsh read them, nodded. This helps. I'll present it to the Attorney General tomorrow. What are my chances? Honestly, 50-50. The evidence is strong, but Silas has resources, lawyers who will drag this out for years, and the bank will fight independently even if he's convicted. So I might still lose everything. You might, but you'll lose it fighting. That counts for something. Did it? Evelyn wasn't sure anymore. She'd spent 3 weeks fighting, exhausting herself, risking everything, and she might still end up homeless and broke. That night, she told Caleb she was done. I can't do this anymore. Can't fight battles I'm not going to win. Can't watch the town turn against me while I spend every cent I have on lawyers and experts and hope that maybe, possibly, the system will work for once. So what are you saying? I'm saying maybe the bank wins. Maybe I sell, take whatever they offer, and leave. Caleb was quiet for a long time. Then, is that what you want? I don't know what I want anymore. I'm tired, Caleb. So tired. He pulled her close. She leaned against his chest, listening to his heartbeat, solid and steady. I told you before, he said, that if it came to it, we'd leave. Start over somewhere else. That offer still stands. And go where? Montana? Canada? Live in a cabin in the middle of nowhere? If that's what it takes. I don't want to live in the middle of nowhere. Then where do you want to live? Evelyn pulled back, looked at him. I want to live here, in Black Hollow, in the town I grew up in. I want to keep my father's store and serve the people who've ignored me for 6 years and prove that being ordinary and invisible and 39 years old doesn't mean I deserve to lose everything. Then keep fighting. I'm losing. You're not losing. You're tired. There's a difference. How do you know? Because I spent 20 years losing, running away, hiding in the mountains, telling myself it was better to be alone than to risk getting hurt again. He touched her face. You taught me different. Taught me that fighting, even when you might lose, is better than giving up. I didn't teach you anything. Yes, you did. You dragged me into your house during a blizzard, saved my life when you could have left me to freeze, stood up to Silas Crow when everyone said you should surrender. You're the bravest person I know, Evelyn. Don't stop being brave now. She wanted to believe him, wanted to feel brave instead of exhausted and defeated. But the next morning, Margaret Walsh showed up with news that made everything change. The Attorney General approved the investigation, she said. Full territorial resources, handwriting experts, forensic accountants, everything you need. Evelyn's breath caught. Why? Because Silas Crow's corruption went deeper than we thought. The bank wasn't just complicit, it was central. Every fraudulent foreclosure, every forged document, it all went through their systems. If we can prove institutional fraud, we can shut them down, seize their assets, return properties to legitimate owners. How long will it take? Months. Maybe a year. But in the meantime, the Attorney General is placing a hold on all foreclosures related to properties in Silas's ledgers, including yours. I can keep the store? Until the investigation concludes, yes. Evelyn sat down hard. After 3 weeks of fighting, of exhausting every option, of preparing to lose everything, she'd won. Not completely, not permanently, but enough. For now, it was enough. The investigation took 8 months. 8 months of lawyers and depositions and courtroom drama. 8 months of watching Silas's empire collapse piece by piece as the territorial government seized properties, froze accounts, arrested co-conspirators. The bank fought hard, claimed ignorance, blamed rogue employees, insisted the fraud was Silas's alone, but the evidence was overwhelming. By spring of 1884, the First Territorial Bank of Wyoming had been dissolved, its assets distributed to the families it had defrauded, its executives facing criminal charges. Silas himself never went to trial. He died in custody in February, officially from pneumonia, though rumors suggested he'd made enemies even in prison who'd decided justice couldn't wait for the courts. Evelyn felt nothing when she heard. Not relief, not satisfaction, just a vast, empty awareness that the man who'd tried to destroy her was gone, and she was still standing. The foreclosure was officially dismissed in March, the forged loan declared void. The trading post returned to Evelyn's sole ownership with an official apology from the territorial attorney general. Margaret Walsh delivered the papers personally. "You did it," she said. "Against impossible odds, you won." "We won," Evelyn corrected. "I couldn't have done it alone." Walsh smiled. "No, but you started it. That took courage." After she left, Evelyn stood in her trading post, the same building her father had built, the same shelves he'd stocked, the same counter where she'd spent 6 years being invisible. But she wasn't invisible anymore. Black Hollow had changed too, slowly, reluctantly. The people who'd turned their backs during the fight started returning, awkward, apologetic, pretending nothing had happened. Evelyn served them, sold them flour and nails and coffee, didn't mention their abandonment, didn't make them grovel, but she didn't forget either. Some bridges, once burned, stay burned. That spring, Caleb started talking about leaving. "Storm season's coming," he said. "Need to get back to my cabin, check the trap lines, make repairs before summer." They were sitting on Evelyn's porch. Their porch now, really, since he'd been living there for months. The sun was setting over the Medicine Bow Mountains, painting the snow gold and pink. "When will you leave?" Evelyn asked, trying to keep her voice neutral. "Thought maybe next week." "That soon?" "Been gone almost a year. Place is probably falling apart." She nodded. Didn't trust herself to speak. Caleb was quiet for a moment, then, Unless what? "Unless you came with me." Evelyn turned. "To your cabin?" "To see it, anyway. See if you could stand living that far from town, that far from everything." "I have the store." "I know, but you also have options now. Could hire someone to manage it. Visit once a month for inventory and accounts. Run the business without living behind the counter. You want me to move to the middle of nowhere." "I want you to have choices. You've spent your whole life doing what other people expected, taking care of your father, running the store, fighting Silas. Maybe it's time to do what you want." "What if I don't know what I want?" "Then come find out." They left in April, when the high passes started to clear. Rode north and west, into country so remote Evelyn couldn't find it on any map. The cabin was smaller than she'd imagined. One room, stone fireplace, furniture Caleb had built himself. But the view was staggering. Endless mountains, pristine valleys, sky so big it hurt to look at. "This is where you've been living?" Evelyn asked. "For 20 years." "Alone?" "Alone." She walked around the cabin, examining everything. The neat stack of firewood, the cured pelts hanging from the rafters, the shelf of books, Shakespeare, Whitman, technical manuals on trapping and survival. "It's quiet," she said. "Too quiet." "I don't know yet." They stayed 3 days. Caleb showed her the trap lines, the fishing spots, the trails he used to navigate the high country, taught her how to read weather in the clouds, how to identify animal tracks, how to move through wilderness without leaving traces. Evelyn was terrible at most of it, but she tried. On the third night, sitting by the fire while wind howled outside, she made a decision. "I can't live here full time," she said. "I'd go crazy within a month." "I know, but I could visit, spend summers here maybe, or a few weeks at a time." "And the rest of the year?" "The rest of the year, you come to town, live with me, help with the store." Caleb looked at her. "You want me to work retail?" "I want you to stay. The location's negotiable." "That's not how I imagined my life going." "How did you imagine it?" "Honestly, I didn't. Figured I'd die up here eventually, alone, unmarked grave that nobody would find." "That's depressing." "That's realistic." Evelyn moved closer, took his scarred, weathered hands in hers. "Here's a different version. You split time between the cabin and town. Keep your trap lines, your solitude. But also have a home with me. A life that's more than just survival. People in town barely tolerate me." "People in town barely tolerate anyone. You'll fit right in." "I'm not good at fitting in." "Neither am I." "We'll be terrible at it together." Caleb smiled. The real smile, not the barely there one. "You're asking me to marry you." "No, I'm asking you to build a life with me. Marriage is optional." "Is it?" "I've spent 39 years doing what's expected. I'm done with that. If we decide to get married, it'll be because we want to, not because the Methodist ladies think we should." "Fair enough." He kissed her. "Then yes, I'll split time between here and town. Try to be domestic. Probably fail at it. Probably, Evelyn agreed. But we'll fail together. They rode back to Black Hollow in early May. The town was green with spring growth, the mines were reopening after winter shutdown, and the trading post needed restocking after months of Evelyn's absence. Life resumed, but different now, better. Evelyn hired help, a young woman named Sarah who was smart and didn't mind the long hours. Expanded the inventory to include mining equipment and camping supplies. Turned the back warehouse into a satellite depot for high country trappers who couldn't make it to town regularly. The business grew. Slowly. Steadily. Caleb split his time like they'd agreed. Summers in the high country, winters in town, spring and fall wherever felt right. He never became social, never fit the mold of a proper town citizen. But people respected him. The miners appreciated his knowledge of the mountains. The ranchers valued his tracking skills. And everyone knew you didn't mess with Evelyn Mercer's mountain man. They never officially married, didn't see the point. They were building something that didn't need legal documents or church approval. Something honest and real and entirely theirs. 3 years later, in the summer of 1887, Evelyn sold the trading post. Not because she had to, because she wanted to. A young couple from Laramie made an offer, fair price, good terms, promised to keep the Mercer name on the sign. Evelyn accepted. "Why now?" Caleb asked when she told him. "Because I'm 42 years old and I've spent enough time behind that counter. Time to do something else." "Like what?" "Like this." She showed him the plans. A lodge and trading post in the high country, halfway between Black Hollow and Caleb's cabin. A place for trappers and travelers and anyone who needed supplies or shelter or just a place to rest. "You want to build a business in the middle of nowhere?" Caleb asked. "I want to build a life in the middle of somewhere. There's a difference." They broke ground in August. Had the structure finished by first snow. Spent the winter making it functional, stocking shelves, building furniture, establishing supply lines. The lodge opened in spring of 1888. It wasn't grand, wasn't fancy, just a solid timber building with a store on the first floor and lodging on the second. But it filled a need. Within a year, it was the most reliable resupply point in the Northern Territory. Trappers stopped by to trade pelts. Prospectors bought equipment. Travelers rested for a night before pushing deeper into the wilderness. And Evelyn Mercer, the woman everyone had forgotten, the spinster nobody wanted, the invisible shopkeeper, became the heart of a thriving mountain community. People asked her sometimes if she missed Black Hollow, missed the town she'd spent her whole life in. "No," she always said, "that life was someone else's. This one's mine." 10 years later, in the spring of 1898, Evelyn and Caleb sat on the porch of their lodge watching the sunset. She was 52. He was 63. Both of them scarred by life and weather. Both of them stronger than they looked. "You ever regret it?" Caleb asked. "Leaving town, building this place, all of it." "Not once." "Even when things were hard?" "Especially when things were hard. That's when I knew I was doing something real." She looked at him. "You? No regrets? Except maybe waiting so long to stop hiding." "You weren't hiding. You were surviving." "Same thing sometimes." They sat in comfortable silence. Below them, the valley was green with summer growth. Above them, the peaks were still white with snow. Smoke rose from the lodge chimney. Inside, 3 travelers were eating dinner and swapping stories. "The town used to call me expired," Evelyn said, "like I was spoiled milk, past my prime." "I remember." "They were wrong. I wasn't expired. I was just waiting for the right time to start living." Caleb took her hand. "And the mountain man they called a monster? He was just waiting for someone to see him as human. Think we would have found each other if the blizzard hadn't happened? If circumstances had been different?" Evelyn considered. "I don't know. Maybe. Maybe not. But I'm glad we did." "Me too." The sun set completely. Stars emerged, brilliant and infinite. Inside the lodge, someone started playing a fiddle. Laughter echoed across the valley. 2 people the world had thrown away. 2 people who'd been told they were worthless, dangerous, expired, unwanted. Together, they'd built something unstoppable. And for the first time in both their lives, they were finally home. Years later, when Evelyn was old and her hands couldn't hold a pen steady anymore, Someone asked her what she'd learned from her life, what wisdom she could offer. She thought about it, about the trading post, about Silas Crow, about the blizzard and the fight and the long road to building something real. I learned, she said, that being invisible isn't the same as being worthless, that the world's opinion doesn't define your value, that sometimes the people society discards are the ones with the most to offer. And what about love? The person asked. What did you learn about love? Evelyn smiled. I learned that love isn't about being perfect. It's about being seen, being chosen, finding someone who looks at your scars and sees survival instead of damage. Is that what Caleb saw in you? That's what we saw in each other. She died in the winter of 1915, at 70 years old, in the lodge she'd built with her own hands. Caleb followed 6 months later. They were buried on the ridge above the valley, where the view stretched forever and the wind never stopped singing. The lodge operated for another 30 years before finally closing, but the story lived on. The tale of the invisible woman and the mountain man, the spinster and the monster, the two people everyone forgot who became unforgettable. And sometimes, when the light hits right and the wind carries voices across the valley, people swear they can still hear laughter from the ridge, still see smoke rising from a chimney that's been cold for decades. Maybe it's just memory, maybe it's something more. Either way, it's a reminder that being dismissed by the world isn't the end of your story. It's just the beginning of you writing a better one.
Turn yourself up!
All right, boys, I want no monkeying around.
Maybe a little bit of monkey.
Who's coming with me to the fire exit?
I'll come, Ben.
I'm about to go.
I'm
about to go.
That's beautiful, Ben.
That's beautiful.
I've always said that.
I've always said that this is so beautiful.
So beautiful. I'm about to. I'm about to. What up? What up? Not the beatboxing.
What up,
My.
player?
Whoa! Oh! Lou bug. Excuse me. Sorry. Excuse me, dude. We're gonna let Chandler figure that one out. My life, my life, my life, my life, and the sunshine. Do-do-do, everybody loves the sunshine. Do-do-do, sunshine. Oh man, that end. This is Wyan's first time in like 3 years. I'm sure he's gonna do great. I have high hopes. And that's beautiful. Megan, what are you doing? Okay. Where's the money? Oh, I didn't like that. Show me the money. I'm finally home. Nice. I don't like the